It's 5 p.m. here in Lagos, Nigeria, and the last edition of The World Today for the week. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump nominates Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health Secretary. At least 10 people killed in fire outbreak at a care home in northeastern Spain. Plus, Sri Lanka's leftist ruling coalition wins election in landslide victory. The World Today begins right now. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has announced Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as his pick to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Mr. Kennedy, an environmental activist who some see as a vaccine skeptic, ran for president in this year's election as an independent before dropping out in August and endorsing Mr. Trump in exchange for a role in the administration. Mr. Kennedy, the son and nephew of two giants of U.S. Democratic politicians and politics, has been a part of the Trump transition team and has been reviewing candidates' resumes for the top jobs at U.S. health agencies. The politician has indicated his intention to tackle chronic disease conditions and reduce chemicals in food. Mr. Trump revealed his pick during an event at his resort in Florida.
Another one who's another great mind and a great guy and so popular, and I think he's right. He wants to make people healthy. It's driven him pretty wild over the last number of years, and the Democrats didn't treat him well. He was doing fantastically well, and I think they came out with some rule that you had to do this, Mike. You had to get 70 or 75% of the vote to qualify to be in the primary. That was a pretty tough thing to get. And he was doing incredibly well, and he decided he can't do it, went independent. Now he's with us all the way. And today I nominated him for, I guess, if you like health and if you like people that live a long time, it's the most important position, RFK Jr. Bobby? Good.
Another addition to Donald Trump's administration is Todd Blanche, nominated for Deputy Attorney General. Mr. Blanche, who served as his counsel, defended Mr. Trump at his trial this year in a criminal case over hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels. He's also representing Mr. Trump in two federal cases over his efforts to overturn his defeat in the 2020 election and his retention of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. Both cases are expected to wind down before the president-elect returns to the White House in January. The role of the Deputy Attorney General is the second highest position at the Justice Department. They are charged with providing day-to-day supervision of over 100,000 employees of the Justice Department, the FBI, and other investigative agencies. Meanwhile, the Interior Secretary role goes to North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Speaking at the Americans for Prosperity Gala in Florida, Mr. Trump called Governor Burgum an incredible person who's going to do a fantastic job as the head of Interior. In the role, he would inherit the agency that oversees natural resources, public lands, and Indian affairs from Deb Haaland, a former member of Congress who made history as the first Native American cabinet secretary.
We're going to slash energy costs. We're going to get your energy bills in half, and that's going to bring down the cost, generally speaking. And we're going to have a whole new, we have a big announcement, and I won't tell you the name of his, the exact name. I think he's an incredible person. He's got an unbelievably wonderful wife named Catherine. So I won't tell you his name. It might be something like Burgum. He's from North Dakota. He's going to be announced tomorrow for a very big position. So everybody's waiting. There he is. Hi, Doug. He's going to be announced tomorrow, and we have somebody else that's probably coming up with him to be announced, who's a big one. And we're going to do things with energy and with land, interior, that is going to be incredible. And so I look forward to doing the formal announcement, although this is a pretty big announcement right now. Actually, he's going to head the Department of Interior, and he's going to be fantastic. Good, Doug. Congratulations, Catherine. But we'll make the formal announcement tomorrow. All right?
Let's get more on this. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now. Maria, great to hear from you today. President-elect Donald Trump has so far named over 20 picks for his administration, a number of which are controversial. What has been some of the reactions from Americans post-election?
Well, many Americans are not surprised. I think that his team was preparing and they were ready for potentially ensuring that he would be the next candidate, obviously, for the White House, but also that he would have his team in place. And so it is clear that they knew who they wanted before he even went into potentially winning, and then he's now president-elect. So many Americans are more so surprised potentially at who he's naming. I think Americans knew that he would not be relying on some of his previous cabinet members and those who were close confidants of him previously, but they were not quite sure, I think, of who he would be naming for these roles. And it's expected that we probably should know most of these roles before the end of the calendar year.
And are people confident in Mr. Trump's selection for the White House administration?
Well, some are confident, obviously, those who are strong supporters of the president, but those who are not necessarily supporters, I think, and who might have potentially been looking at other avenues for who would be the next president, I think are concerned about some of the allegations, especially you talk about the attorney general, and also the experience becomes a question. So it's going to really be incumbent upon the new administration to be very clear on their direction, how these individuals will be able to carry out those duties that they're being assigned to, and I think providing the American people, all American people, with a sense of comfort with where the country is going moving forward.
And we see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. picked as health secretary. There's already been so much criticism. The head of the American Public Health Association says he's absolutely the wrong guy. Many wonder why the so-called vaccine skeptic was nominated for such a top role.
Well, the Kennedys have obviously been within the United States political scene for many, many years. If you go back into kind of the civil rights era, you know what John F. Kennedy means to so many Americans. And so I think that it's controversial. It's the fact that he definitely has stepped into a lane that is outside of what many would consider his family legacy. And so I think that's really where you get the controversy, is that I think the surprise initially when he was supporting the president-elect, but now I think it is expected. And I think many people knew that if he was supporting the former president, and if he did win the recent election, that Robert F. Kennedy would in some way play a large role due to his political background and his family background. And I think the president-elect's administration is hopeful that this will bring some of those older Democrats and even those more traditional Republicans that had strong respect for the Kennedy family and John F. Kennedy, and obviously his father served in the role. So they have a long history of political work and obviously work around bringing communities together. So I think that's the hope of this administration for having him be fit in this role.
And now we know, a lot of those people that will be working with Mr. Trump, and come January, whether with formal or informal announcements, as we saw earlier. Do walk us through what the typical process for Mr. Trump's White House nominations was like, and how did it compare to the previous administration?
Well, I think it's not very different from the standpoint of those who are strong supporters, who are right there in the rooms as they're campaigning and putting out strategies for the campaign are typically those who are provided with top roles. And so those who were close to the former president throughout this campaign cycle, we could anticipate we're going to have some sort of a prominent role if he was to win, which he did, the White House in this most recent election. And so that is something that's very common, very much what you probably saw during the Biden administration, Obama administration, all the previous presidents that have served before. That is very typical. And even if you think about during the previous election cycle with President-elect Trump, and you saw how close he was to Rudy Giuliani, and you saw some of these individuals that he was very close to who were prominent roles in his last administration. So that is not uncommon. The piece that's going to be, I think, the question mark is when he has to bring these individuals forth to get confirmed. And so that is where it's going to be incumbent upon the Congress to be able to confirm these individuals or to provide questioning and to push back on the president if they feel as though these individuals do not have the requisite for these jobs.
And how diverse are, these nominees in terms of background, expertise, and ideology? And, I'm asking on the background of the implications this would have for policy decisions. We see calls for a House investigation into Matt Gaetz, Trump's choice for Attorney General.
Yes, these nominations are going to be critical. And as you said, some of the investigations that are ongoing, those investigations potentially will be put on hold and put on stall. And as you mentioned, the Attorney General, the investigation there, that is something I think that has brought concern to some Americans, many Americans, to be quite honest. And so I think it's really going to be incumbent upon the president's administration to provide further clarification in that area for the public to be able to clearly understand how they plan to move forward and exactly the full scope, especially when you're speaking of the Attorney General position.
And finally, Maria, how are plans going for a smooth transition that President Joe Biden has talked about?
Well, the transition started the day that the election was over. His administration started to put together documents, files, meeting with his transition, the President-elect's transition committee and members, ensuring that they have all the information, especially being as though we have had, whether it's coming out of COVID, whether or not it's the war in Israel, whether or not it's the war with Ukraine and Russia, all of these very hot topic, very critical issues that the Biden administration has been tackling, not to mention the economic challenges. So it's been busy, and it will be busy all the way up until the day in which the president-elect takes office on January 20th.
Maria, thanks again.
Yes.
Well, Argentina's President Javier Milei has met Donald Trump in Florida, calling it an honor to meet him. Mr. Trump also praised the Argentinian president for the jobs he's done in his home country, calling on him to make Argentina great again. Argentina's country risk index plunged on Thursday to its lowest level since July 2019, and as markets showed confidence in its public debt performance, fiscal surplus, inflation curbs, and government dollar buybacks under the Libertarian president, the index has been trending downwards since he took office in December 2023.
Javier, I'd like to congratulate you on the job you've done for Argentina. Your speech was beautiful, but the job you've done is incredible. Make Argentina great again. MAGA. He's a MAGA person. And it's an honor to be here, and thank you, Sly. Thank you, everybody. Great honor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's move on now. At least 10 people have been killed and others hurt in a fire that broke out at a retirement home near Zaragoza in northeastern Spain. According to local officials, the fire started on Friday morning at the establishment, which housed 82 people at the time. The 16-year-old care home is a specialized care center for seniors with mental health challenges. The fire has been put out and 2 people transported to hospital. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez expressed his dismay and shock at the disaster. The Spanish government's delegate in Aragon region, Fernando Beltran, also paid his condolences to the victims and said they would continue to monitor the progress of those in hospital and investigation into the cause of the fire. As well now, Sri Lankan President Anura Dissanyake's leftist coalition has achieved a landslide victory in snap elections. According to the country's election commission, the National People's Power Coalition secured a 2/3 majority in parliament with 159 of the 225 seats, beating the opposition alliance, which won 40 seats. Sri Lanka's president, a 55-year-old veteran politician, was elected president on September 21 in a rejection of traditional political parties that have governed the island nation since independence from British rule in 1948, but had received just 42% of the vote. His party's victory on Friday vindicated his decision to immediately call polls and secure parliamentary backing for his plans to combat corruption and recover stolen assets. More than 5,000 people protested next to the Lithuanian parliament on Thursday against election winners, the Social Democrats, entering into a parliamentary coalition with a party whose leader is on trial accused of anti-Semitic statements. The Social Democrats took control of 86 seats in the 141-member parliament after forming a coalition with the Nemunas Dawn and the Lithuania party's members were sworn in on Thursday. Nemunas Dawn party founder resigned from parliament in April ahead of an impeachment vote after the Constitutional Court ruled he had broken his oath by stirring up hatred against Jews in a social media post last year. The founder went on trial in September, accused of attempting to create hostility and provoking intolerance towards Jews and with playing down the Holocaust in Lithuania. But he has said his posts were not anti-Semitic and has denied any wrongdoing.
The leader of this party in his previous term in Seimas was impeached by the Constitutional Court of Lithuania. This impeachment was confirmed, but he put down his mandate in order to become a member of Seimas again, and he was elected again, basically on the same methodology. And now we as citizens requiring that Social Democratic Party and another party would not form coalition with this party which has such a leader. The words of this person already had a big impact on international relationship, because our allies, both from United States, from Germany, has expressed serious doubts, and we really worry about that.
Now to the war in Gaza. We're learning that Israel's army has released 20 Palestinian prisoners through the Karim Abu commercial crossing. According to officials, the detainees were taken to the European hospital in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, for treatment. Most of the detainees were arrested a month ago from the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Palestine's Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs says at least 43 Palestinian prisoners have died in Israeli prisons since October 2023. And in Gaza, an Israeli strike hit a school, sheltering displaced families, killing 4 people. People at the site were attempting to extinguish the fire as smoke billowed from the building. Palestinian Health Ministry officials say Israel's latest airstrike killed at least 15 people across the enclave, including 4 at the Salahuddin school. The Gaza Health Ministry said 43,736 people have been confirmed dead since October 7, 2023. Palestinian group Hamas killed around 1,200 Israelis that day and still hold dozens of some 250 hostages they took back to Gaza, according to Israeli tallies. Meanwhile, explosions continue to rock Beirut's southern suburbs in the early hours of Friday amid ongoing hostilities between Hezbollah and Israeli forces. Pressing its offensive against the Iran-backed group, Israel hit Beirut's Hezbollah-controlled southern suburbs, carrying out intense attacks there for a fourth consecutive day. In a more hopeful sign, local political sources in Lebanon say the U.S. ambassador to the country has submitted a draft truce proposal to Lebanon's parliament speaker, Nabi Berri. They say the draft is Washington's first written proposal to halt fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in at least several weeks. And to the war in Ukraine, a Russian air attack struck a residential building and energy installations on Thursday evening in and near Ukraine's Black Sea port of Odessa. Officials say at least one person was killed, injuring 8 and knocking out a boiler plant used for heating. High-rise apartments were also damaged, along with about 30 cars. Heating infrastructure for one of the city's maternity hospitals was also damaged. Odessa Mayor Hennady Trukhanov describes the attack as a mass combined enemy strike, suggesting other weaponry was also used. Odessa has been a frequent Russian target in a more than a 2.5-year-old war and have the port facilities located near the city. In the meantime, Moscow's ambassador to the UN says Russia is open to negotiations on an end to the Ukraine war if initiated by US President-elect Donald Trump, but any talks need to be based on realities of Russian advances. Gennady Gatilov says that if Donald Trump starts or suggests something to start the political process, it's welcome. Mr. Trump has repeatedly criticized the scale of Western aid to Kyiv and has promised to end the conflict swiftly without explaining how. His victory in the November 5 presidential election has spurred concerns in Kyiv and other European capitals about the degree of future U.S. commitment to helping Ukraine. Gatilov indicates Trump's election represents a new possibility for dialogue with the United States, but it's doubtful about a broader reset of relations, echoing earlier caution voiced by the Kremlin. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly said peace cannot be established until all Russian forces are expelled.
We are open and we are ready to cooperate. But of course, we will be cooperating on the basis of our national interests. This is, I would say, it's the main point. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. I don't know. Trump promised to settle down the Ukrainian crisis overnight. Okay, let him try. But we know that we are realistic people. Of course, we understand that this will never happen. But if he starts or suggests something to start the political process, it's welcome, of course. We have no illusion about the president-elect or the new Congress, now under Republican control. The U.S. political elite, regardless of domestic political shifts, consistently pursues a stance of containing Moscow, and this orientation is deeply rooted, unfortunately, and the change of administration does little to alter it.
Well, state-run television KRT in North Korea reports that leader Kim Jong-un has guided a test of suicide drones and ordered a mass production of the aerial weapons. saying the introduction of such drones around the world requires an urgent update of military theory. KRT released still photographs of Kim looking at drones and quoted him as saying that the competition for using drones for military purposes is accelerating around the world, with military authorities likely recognizing their success in conflicts of various scale. Mr. Kim had previously supervised the test of suicide drones earlier in the year amid a rapidly developing military cooperation with Russia, raising questions as to whether he was receiving technical help from Moscow to develop them. Also known as loitering munitions, such weapons have been widely used in the war in Ukraine as well as in the Middle East. Now, the bodies of 3 more victims have been found in Sinaloa, northern Mexico, the same day after the prosecutor's office of Mexico's Sinaloa state said it's investigating the killing of some 14 people whose bodies were found around the city of Culiacan. The Undersecretary of Public Security of the state, Leoncio Pedro Garcia, said that in the early morning of Thursday, a report was made about 3 bodies located near a local cemetery. The bodies showed signs of violence and are yet to be identified. 100 more Mexican army troops arrived in the city on Wednesday night to reinforce security operations in the state. Mexico has suffered a recent wave of violence, with hundreds killed in intra-cartel warfare in Sinaloa, as well as massacres in other states such as Querétaro, where 10 people were killed in a bar over the weekend. Meanwhile, in Haiti, residents of Solino and Nazoni central neighborhoods in the capital, Port-au-Prince, are fleeing their homes as gangs spread to one of the few remaining areas of town not already under their control. A coalition of gangs known as VIV has been cementing their hold over the country, while the political leadership has been racked by infighting, and a long-delayed foreign security mission has made scarce progress. It's unclear immediately how many people have fled. Local media reported that the security situation had worsened after a police officer in the area was killed. More than 700,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in Haiti due to the extended conflict. According to the International Organization for Migration, thousands of people have been killed amid reports of widespread sexual violation, ransom, kidnappings, and extortion, while some 6,000 people have been plunged into famine-level hunger. Elsewhere now, flights out of Bali have resumed following multiple cancellations due to eruptions from a volcano in eastern Indonesia. Tourists, including those from Australia and New Zealand, were expecting to fly out earlier this week, but further eruptions from Mount Lewatobi Laki-Laki in East Nusa Tenggara province, about 800 kilometers away from Bali, forced several international airlines such as Jetstar and Qantas to cancel flights. Mount Lewatobi first erupted on November 3rd and has killed at least 9 people. It has since erupted several times and spewed ash clouds as high as 10 kilometers and forced thousands of people to evacuate. Well, key climate experts have said the United Nations COP climate talks are no longer fit for purpose and need an urgent overhaul. They argue countries should not host climate talks. They don't support the phase out of fossil fuel energy. It comes as the UN's climate change conference is ongoing in Baku. At a time of turmoil around the world, there's the election of a US president who's known to be a climate change denier. There are deadly floods in Spain that experts say are a direct result of climate change. And Germany, usually one of the loudest voices in the fight against climate change, is reeling from a government collapse. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and joins us now from Berlin. Lars, what are you hearing from COP29 in Baku against the backdrop of everything that I've just talked about?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, you said it. It's a really tricky environment there at the conference. Those deadly floods in Spain, the second time now, by the way, that hundreds are being killed by what is clearly a result of climate change. Certainly a reminder of how desperately we need action on that front. And no one made that more clear, of course, than Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Earlier in the week, he literally begged attendees at the conference not to listen to anyone who tries to say that a climate transition will be bad for the middle or working class or the well-being of a country. He says to the contrary, it's going back to oil, it's a deregulation of the fossil fuel industry. That's what would be bad, not only for the middle or working class, but literally for any country ever to be struck by extreme weather events, which are, as has been pointed out many times, directly linked to climate change. So the message is clear in Baku. We need drastic action on climate change, but it's also clear that it won't come easy, whether it's because of powerful special interest groups or general financial worries.
And financing the climate transition has always been, a sticking point. Are there any new ideas there?
Yes, indeed there are, and the German delegation is pushing hard for those. While Chancellor Olaf Scholz is actually not present in Baku, after all, his government just fell apart, like you pointed out too, and there's a lot to do for him at home. Germany has actually sent 4 ministers to the conference. They're making the case that certain wealthy countries like China, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf nations are asked to pay up too, something that is not happening yet. Those countries that I mentioned are still seen by the UN as developing nations and actually receive funds to help them finance climate measures in their countries, which sounds bizarre considering that they are among the economically most powerful countries in the world as it is. And they're also behind some of the most serious problems leading to climate change. Now, it's one thing, of course, to ask for a stronger financial commitment from certain countries. It's another thing to actually get that money, and it certainly doesn't look good at this point. Over the past few years, investments in oil and gas exploration have gone way up, risen by 30% just since 2021. And that is certainly a sign that renewable energies are not yet seen as interesting enough to attract the investments they would need.
And Lars, how confident are conference attendees that, more money will actually be eventually directed into renewables?
Well, sadly, there is not too much optimism, and much of that has to do with those most recent developments in the U.S. With the election of Donald Trump to another term in the White House, there will most certainly be a tidal change in the U.S. Again, less money will flow into green energy, certainly not more. During his campaign, Trump has repeatedly said that he wants to drill, which is kind of ironic because he said it so often that it seems he might be totally unaware of the fact that the U.S. is already by a large margin the strongest country when it comes to oil and gas exploration. Also during his campaign, Trump met with executives from the oil sector and promised them to basically deregulate the energy sector entirely if they just gave him $1 billion in campaign funds. Now, as preposterous as that sounds and as corrupt as it is, it would certainly not be beyond Trump to follow through on such plans. So, a long story short, the need for action on climate change is higher than ever before, and the willingness or ability of countries even to actually step up is going down rather than up.
Lars, thanks again for your time. Meanwhile, the COP29 host, Azerbaijan, is trying to mend diplomatic rift after the French Environment Minister shunned the conference, and Argentina asked its delegates to withdraw. COP29 lead negotiator Yalchin Rafiev insists that Azerbaijan had fostered an inclusive process during the conference. Meanwhile, it's finance day at the COP29, as we talked about earlier, and a new report released says 10-day countries most impacted by climate change between 2000 and 2019 received less than 2% of all climate finance. Climate campaigners at the climate conference in Baku are urging governments to pay for public grant-based funding through progressive taxes on major polluters. Our correspondent, Ayola Kasim, reports.
Massive banners declaring pay up displayed across the Baku Stadium seats. In perfect sight from the COP29 presidency offices located on the opposite side of the arena.
The conversation around climate debt is critical.
While also holding up what they call a 10-meter-long invoice and banners, climate activists say the stakes are too high and poor countries are being pushed to the brink of collapse due to refusal to provide grant-based public climate finance.
Anything that would be based on loans is actually going to make the super rich wealthier. It's not going to solve that issue that we have either, because loans are obviously tied to financial institutions and to the banking system that heavily benefits them. So grants is also the only way that we have to actually redistribute wealth in a fair way.
But with the call for grants comes the question of safeguards and what needs to be set in place in order to both empower developing countries, prevent corruptions, and to ensure accountability. Ministers from the developed countries acknowledge that they did not meet up with the previous goal of $100 billion per year, which expires in 2025. However, setting the tone on what to expect in Baku during the 6th high-level ministerial dialogue on climate finance, Special Envoy on Climate and Environment for Belgium said the new collective quantified goal also needs to be achievable.
And let's face it, we will not be able to close the finance gap with grants alone. And we will not be able to close that gap with only public money. We need to catalyze a shift of the capital that the IPCC tells us is available in our global economy towards our common goals of achieving climate resilience and keeping the 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach.
While the talks are ongoing, Argentina has pulled its delegates from participating, and the French Environment Minister has cancelled her flight to Baku. But the task of producing an acceptable text with a new climate finance deal is going on here in Baku, albeit slowly. From the Olympic Stadium, the venue of COP29 in Azerbaijan, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
Elsewhere now, as the Sudanese authorities extend a 3-month approval given to the UN and aid groups to use the Adre border crossing with Chad, WFP aid trucks continue to move through the crossing area, carrying aid to Darfur and other famine-stricken parts of the country. The World Food Programme says an aid convoy had crossed from Port Sudan via new routes to reach Zamzam camp in Darfur. Footage shared by WFP showed aid trucks moving from Suakin city in the northeastern side of the country. Sudan's Sovereign Council said on Wednesday it would extend the use of the border crossing with Chad, seen as essential by aid agencies for the delivery of food and other supplies to areas at risk of famine in the Darfur and Kordofan regions. The United Nations welcomed the decision to keep the crossing open for another 3 months. More than 308 trucks with supplies for more than 1.3 million people have since crossed into Sudan through the crossing.
Get to these communities. We've got convoys coming from Port Sudan going to Kadugli, to Dilling. Also other convoys trying to reach North Darfur. The message is these convoys have to reach their final destination. We have to get to these populations. We're asking everybody involved along those roads to give us free passage so that we can assist these populations.
Every one of us suffering and lost a couple of his family. Some of them are died. Some of them till now they didn't found where is there. They are gonna to, seeking for them every single place. But unfortunately, they didn't found any other place. So they are escaped from Sudan to Chad for the safe place.
In South Africa, locals in Stilfontein are calling on the government to rescue about 4,000 illegal miners trapped in a closed mine shaft in the country's northwest province. The miners had been underground for about a month, but the government says it will not help them. Food and water supplies have also been cut off in an effort to smoke them out and arrest them. Footage from today shows authorities surrounding an opening leading into the mine, while residents and relatives of the stranded miners protest the government's decision not to help. The The miners have refused to cooperate with authorities as some are undocumented, coming from neighboring countries like Lesotho and Mozambique, and fear being deported.
We have consulted with the mine owner, we have consulted with DMRE, and they are telling us that it is unsafe, it's inhumane to allow people to go down there. We have taken a decision that no police officer, no soldier, no government official will go down to an abandoned mine. Firstly, there are hazardous gases that are flowing there.
It shows that the government has intention of at least committing genocide. I mean, our government has launched a case against Israel for not providing food to people. Now we are here in South Africa. The very same government cannot provide food to the people that are dying in the same land.
We have been given reports that we've got about more than 4,000 people who are stuck underground. But what comes to us as a surprise is getting here and we don't see any involvement or participation of the state in trying to take those people underground. We do understand that these are illegal miners, but they are still human beings.
My man is down there 4 months. No money for my younger child. They keep off from school. No school fees. I don't have money for food. I don't have money for nothing. Now I must go to the doctor to scan my baby, or it's girl or it's boy. I don't have money. I don't have nothing.
Elsewhere, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism, in partnership with Meta, has launched a new augmented reality technology at the Old Egyptian Museum. The aim of this AR tech is to target young visitors and give an alternative experience of incomplete statues.
A new augmented reality technology is up and running at the Old Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Egypt's Ministry of Tourism, together with Meta, hope to entice young people and give different experiences of incomplete statues. The collaboration with Meta is named Revival, and it offers a virtual restoration for statues and artifacts with missing parts. Ali Abdelhalim is the museum's general manager.
For instance, we have a statue head of Hatshepsut. Queen Hatshepsut is known for her temple at Deir el-Bahari. Years ago, they found this head at the temple, part of a statue that we don't fully have anymore.
The collaboration with Meta comes through usage of the company's augmented reality technology on Instagram, offering the content in both Arabic and English through scanning a QR code next to an artifact, where the visitor can then view the full digital version through the platform.
We're aiming to help visitors imagine what the statue once looked like. The idea behind this kind of experience is to promote artifacts in a different way, not just by photographing and displaying them, but by allowing people from many places to see a complete, interactive, digital version of the artifact. Younger audiences are less interested in traditional exhibits. Young people are more drawn to technology and enjoy interactive experiences, like games. So, we wanted to introduce a new method to attract them to museums by incorporating something they love.
The Heritage Revival Clinic project done in the Egyptian Museum is unique and the first of its kind in the world. Head of Meta in Middle East and Africa, Faris Al-Akkad, says the project is also for young people to interact with history and rekindle their interest in this ancient civilization.
The Heritage Revival Clinic initiative we're working on is unique and the first of its kind in the world. This initiative, in collaboration with Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Museums, aims to digitally restore Egyptian artifacts and spread Egyptian culture globally. It promotes Egyptian tourism and supports education and cultural awareness. We're especially focused on creating an intuitive, engaging way for young people to interact with history and rekindle their interest in this ancient civilization.
The project is currently only available at these two museums. However, Instagram says it is exploring opportunities to expand AR experiences to other cultural sites globally.
Well, the King of England's birthday is a national day in the UK and in all of the Commonwealth countries. Here in Lagos, the Deputy High Commission celebrated with business partners and friends of the UK at the residence of the Deputy High Commissioner. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
For a second time running, the residence of the British Deputy High Commissioner is hosting the King's birthday party. Interestingly, November 14 is really the King's birthday. Attending the party are former Commonwealth Secretary General Emeka Anyaoku, other members of the diplomatic corps, staff of British companies in Nigeria, a select crowd of traditional rulers, government officials, creatives, the Nigerian business community, and the media. An applause, As please. The evening progresses, the British Deputy High Commissioner welcomes guests and highlights the unique partnership between Nigeria and the UK.
It was a highlight for us in Nigeria, and I'm sure a highlight for the King, was his meeting with His Excellency President Tinubu earlier in the year. And the warmth of that meeting was clearly visible in all of the photographs. And while we're remembering the late Queen, I would like to commend the National Museum for returning Ben Ogunwu's statue of the Queen to public display. By this time next year, some of Ben's work will be centre stage in a major exhibition of Nigerian modernism at the Tate Modern in London. But for me, the exhibition at the National Museum, the descriptions of the media buzz at the time, and above everything else, the statue, produced by a man described as the star of Nigeria, and the subject, probably already, even at that time, the most famous woman in the world, a young Queen Elizabeth, should remind us of the long-standing and vibrant links between our two countries. And this year, we're representing those links in a campaign that combines two of our national favourites, jollof and tea.
Representing the Lagos State Governor is the Secretary to the State Government, Mrs. Abiola Salu Hundeyin, with the Governor's well wishes.
Your Majesty's efforts to advocate for a sustainable future, particularly through your environmental and humanitarian initiatives, have left an indelible mark on the world, and your leadership continues to set a standard for generations to come. On behalf of the people and government of Lagos State, I express our sincere appreciation for the deep historical ties between the United Kingdom and Nigeria, which have fostered strong cultural, diplomatic, and economic partnerships.
A raffle draw, which took place later on, saw Ms. Toyosi Akirele going home with a free business class ticket from British Airways.
Has won a business class return ticket to the UK.
King Charles has only been 2 years on the throne since the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. The UK assures Nigeria growth and relations between the two countries will continue to be strengthened even under his reign.
Can we ask for the sponsors to come on stage?
Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
And finally on the program, how would you react when you walk into your bedroom only to find an intruder sitting on your bed? Would you scream, shout, or call your neighbors for help? Except the so-called intruder isn't a human being, but a koala. A couple who moved from Brazil to the Australian city of Adelaide were shocked as they came home from work to discover a koala sitting in their bedroom. The husband tried to usher the flurry home invader out of the building with a sweater as the animal climbed onto a nightstand before hopping onto the bed. The koala was later seen racing around the house. Moments later, the animal was shown running off into the night after eventually finding an exit. Reminds me of Little Red Riding Hood, but a koala this time and not a bear. Well, that's it on The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week.